It's all yours, Dawn.
Okay, so I still see Housing Committee. I would like to welcome you to today's January 3rd, 2023 housing meeting. We are going to call this meeting to order at 6:36. Let's see if I can get my camera working. Well, as I'm trying to work through my camera, let's go through the ground rules. 1, no one may speak until granted the floor. 2, CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through the Zoom. If you click the participants panel should appear and you should find the raise hand function there. And if you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the staff. Furthermore, the chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand. In other words, don't do what I do and put a bunch of emojis in the chat, please. The chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated out loud on the record during the meeting. Please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Members of the public, if you have a question or comment about the subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom and wait to be recognized. Try not to wait to the very, very end of the meeting to let us know that there's an issue. Maybe try to put that in the chat so that we can make sure that you are recognized during the time that you need to be recognized. So again, I did call the meeting to order at 6:36, but now it is 6:38. So I will amend that if desired, and I will ask Marlene to please call the roll.
You have Chowdhury, Diane Collier,
Present.
Roger Flores, Brandon Gillespie,
Here.
John Green is excused. Alonzo Johnson,
Present.
Beverly Pabon,
Present.
Claudio Perez,
Present.
Dawn Sanders,
Present.
Anne Marie Vasquez,
Present.
Candy Vives Vasquez, and Jason Wu.
Present.
You have a quorum, Dawn.
Thank you so much. Let's see, I'm gonna look at your announcements that you gave me. Thank you so much. I believe that the agenda has been circulated to the members of the committee. Is that true?
Yes, you guys received it 2 weeks ago.
Awesome. So if there are no, if there's nobody in disagreement, we will adopt the agenda that was circulated 2 weeks ago. And we will also adopt, so I'm going to take a second if there's any objection to adopting the agenda. Okay, hearing none, we have adopted the agenda for tonight. And then we would also like to adopt the December committee minutes that were also circulated 2 weeks ago, I believe. So unless there are any objections to that, we would like to adopt the December committee minutes. Okay, seeing no objection, we are going to adopt those December minutes, and thank you so much for everyone who made it to that meeting. Let's see here. I do see some announcements here, also on my script, but I guess I'll start with the most important, which is that Mayor Adams has issued Emergency Executive Order 291, which extends the emergency declaration for 30 days through January 20th, 2023. I think this is a smart move, given that there are a number of ailments, including the flu is worse than it's been in a long time, and RSV and other things like that. And hopefully this allows many more people to participate regardless of where they are or their state of health. So I personally hope that we can continue to do that. But again, if members feel strongly, I believe, Xavier, we can send you an email and tell you if we feel strongly to continue that emergency declaration, or we will come back to you, Xavier. Okay, Xavier, if you could say a few words about that.
Yeah, so the EO is part of the state law that was passed last year that either the state, head of the state, in this case the governor, or the head of a city or village, i.e. the mayor, can extend an emergency order for no more than 30 days at a time. And that's how it typically works, which is why we're constantly pivoting. And the board, we've have expressed, as have other community boards, that it's not tenable to maintain this model, but the restriction is coming from the state legislature. If enough of our membership feels so inclined to pass a resolution, which is, again, to have that conversation at the committee level to support legislation that would extend it to a 90-day period, that's something I could see us pushing forward at this time. But again, I'm always accessible and available to discuss what people's feelings are on this, and I'm not shy about mine, and that we need to preserve the safety of our membership. So that's how I would recommend our board proceed forward. So it's something that we'll hopefully be discussing at executive this month as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much. Is there any other announcements from the members? Is that a no? No one has any announcements? Okay.
Beverly has her hand up.
Oh, Beverly. Okay, Ms. Pavone, please go on.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And again, Happy New Year and good tidings to everyone. I just have a question regarding the EEO 291. If Xavier, you mentioned that the committees or the community board can do a resolution to do it every 90 days or hold it for 90 days, would they have to get approval from any city official in order to do that, or state officials in order to do that?
So the board is, as per the city charter, it serves as a quasi city agency, if you will. And if a committee, typically in a case like this, we would most likely come from executive that would represent all of the committees. But again, if this discussion of this committee would like to, for example, I'm not saying placing on the agenda, but if they would like to have a discussion about it and register that, they can do. We don't need any state legislature authority to pass a resolution. What the resolution would extend is our position in requesting that. Now, then it would be up to a sponsor in the Assembly, a sponsor in the Senate, to then support that and get it passed through Albany. I don't know if there's an appetite for that, but again, these are the conversations that we should have at this level, and then push forward if we feel so inclined So that's typically how it would work. And again, it would be finding a friendly assembly member and a friendly state senator who'd be willing to support such a measure.
Okay, thank you so very much for the clarity.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Pabon. So I did miss a few announcements that were supposed to come at the beginning of the meeting. So I just want to.
I'm sorry, Dawn.
Yeah,
Are you speaking about announcements from the script that you're reading?
yes.
No. Those are examples to help you as the person leading the committee meeting. So you
Okay.
only had one announcement that came in 2 weeks ago for this committee, and that is the Mayor Adams' extension of his executive order. So
Okay,
if
well,
the-
these were even more essential because I just wanted to shout you out and say that tonight we are joined by Community Associate Marlene Pierre, the staff liaison to our committee. So we really appreciate you being here. My name is Dawn Sanders. I'm the vice chair of the committee sitting in to host the meeting this evening. So just those two.
No problem.
All right, thank you. Let's see. We have adopted the minutes. We have the announcements. Okay, there are a few more announcements. No, there are no more. Okay. I see that was a. Okay, so should we go on to informational updates if there's no other announcements?
Yes, if there aren't any announcements from the public, since you guys haven't entered your business session, you can entertain that.
Anybody, any members of the public have something to share with us? I see some familiar names. I'm not going to call you out though. I see familiar names. I'm so glad you're here. Now's your time to give us your announcements. Okay, well, still happy that you're here. Do we have any informational updates moving along? Okay, I don't have any informational updates. Xavier, since you're here, Chair Santiago, do you have anything that you wanted us to think about that would go under informational updates?
So not as well, it does pertain to housing by extension. We will be dealing with the Office of Cannabis Management. We're working with a community partner, Pilar de Jesus, who's been advocating with this measure, and they will be hosting at Metropolitan Hospital stakeholders informational meeting. And it's for those legislators, community board members, members of the public who are so inclined, and how that will affect our neighborhood and the greater city and state. So that will be coming up either, she's not sure, she's waiting for confirmation from the representative who's coming from OCM, but we're looking at possibly January 12th. But we may push, it just depends because we're in the 30 and 60-day comment period. So stay tuned. Once we have that confirmed, an email will go out to all the board members and be posted on our website. So thank you.
Thanks. Is Pilar on? No.
No, she's not.
Okay.
No, she's not, because
Okay.
one of the components that is in this case relevant for housing, though, is that as we have oversight of NYCHA, is that it's still illegal on the federal level, and it would impact those living in NYCHA with the current regulations. And so, yeah. So again, and as people are aware, we did have with the, I forget the exact acronym for it, but ABC, Association to Benefit Children, has the contract for rapid response when there's emotional disturbance in our schools. And they had responded to one here in East Harlem where some youth had purchased from a shop here in the neighborhood edibles, and we're having an episode because the components they weren't designed for the developing adolescent brain, middle school,
Wow.
that young adolescent. So this is something that, again, is going to touch on many of our committees. So I implore, once that information goes out, that everyone book, put it in your calendar and see if you can attend. Thank you.
Diane, do you have something to add? I see you. Don't turn off your camera. Do you have anything to add? Wait, you're on mute.
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, okay. So I think I guess if any members, public members, or if any members or any members of the public were at our last board meeting, there was a presentation and a lot of information. So if I had it, I would put Pilar's information in the chat. But if there is no more dialogue about that or no further thoughts, we will move on to any presentations that we have. Because we don't have any, I don't think we have any, can't see the participants. Is that Stephanie Mercado? Hi there.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Good. What agency are you from, or what group?
Yes, so my name is Stephanie Mercado Altman. Happy New Year, everybody. I'm from New York City Smoke Free at Public Health Solutions. So just here to present this evening.
Okay.
Yeah, so you just tell me how you want to proceed.
Well, if there's, you don't have to give it as an informational update. We have you as giving the presentation.
Perfect.
Did you want to share your screen, or did you
Yep.
want to just, okay. So
Yeah, I have.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you?
I don't think
Okay.
I can give you that right, but I think Marlene
Okay.
can give you that.
Let me see. Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
But it's, yep,
Oh.
there it is.
All right. You would think after.
And your name one more time?
Yeah, Stephanie Mercado Altman.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I'm the Manhattan Community Engagement Manager with New York City Smoke Free.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Hoping that your year is off to a good start. Marlene, thank you for organizing this. Marlene was really helpful and instrumental in getting me through the doors and on here for tonight's meeting. So I just wanted to quickly just give an overview of Public Health Solutions. So we are a non-for-profit in the city of New York, where our mission is really to support vulnerable families in achieving their optimal health. And building pathways to reach their potential. So we work within health equity. We really work with low income, middle income families throughout the city in different capacities. In regards to our work here at New York City Smoke Free, though, and why I wanted to present to the Housing Committee at CB11 is really we in our biggest sense of our work, the mission is really to increase tobacco-free norms throughout the city. As we believe every resident has the right to breathe clean, smoke-free air where they live, work, and play. So we have partnered, with community members, legislators, and health advocates throughout the city to really end the devastating tobacco epidemic that we have seen. And, to give a little bit of background as to how much work we've been able to achieve, we've helped over 54,000 families and individuals in getting 16,000 plus units to go smoke free. And just to give you a little bit of background, our program is free. Our services are free to the public, to the community, as we are funded by the New York State Bureau of Tobacco Control. So that's where our funding and power really comes from, is from their backing from the state. So the reason, I came or wanted to present this evening was really to talk about smoke-free housing policies, engaging with the community, seeing and offering, our help to the constituents of CB11. As I'm not sure if you're all privy to what a smoke-free housing policy is, but at a high level, a smoke-free housing policy can protect and promote the health of all residents, whether they're a smoker or not. It does promote a cleaner, healthier, and safer building to live in, as well as landlords and homeowners do get perks on insurance savings, and that yields higher property value. So these are high level points I just wanted to kind of cast before I jump into the specifics of a smoke-free housing policy and the benefits of adopting such a policy for your building. So in the recent past, up until now, there has been tests that have shown that 65% of air is shared in between units in a multi-unit dwelling building. So if we live in apartments, our buildings do credit themselves as multi-unit dwelling building. Figuratively, we can smell what your neighbor is cooking down the hall. Likely secondhand smoke is also traveling into your apartment unit as well. So, those tests, or rather the smoke does travel in through gaps in the walls, any windows, under doors, any sort of mechanical and electrical chases that are also in the walls. And some of you, we may be privy to this information, especially with, the concerns around lung health and coronavirus, RSV and the like. But secondhand smoke exposure is dangerous, and there is no level or amount of time that is safe to be around secondhand smoke. It does contain a lot of chemicals that are carcinogenic and highly toxic to our systems. I know that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has actually classified some of the ingredients in cigarettes to be Class A carcinogens. That's the highest classification level of a toxin that anything could be attained to. With that being said, there are throughout the US each year 41,000 deaths that are approximately attributable to non-smoking cases. So, secondhand smoke exposure that does impact individuals. And especially, as we're looking out for the health of our children and those with any sort of chronic health conditions, older folks who may live in our buildings, smoke-free policy can help, protect the health of those individuals as well. And, switching a little bit from health to like the environmental impacts of smoking, fires, hazards, things of that like. So this data is actually, and the slides to come were pulled from the Bureau of Fire Investigation from their annual report of 2020. And the first point that I wanted to show here is is that smoking is the second leading cause of accidental fires in New York City. So let me just switch to the graph. So you can see here, these are the summary of fire cases for the city. The first being electrical, the second being smoking fire. So any sort of fire that started with a cigarette being lit, getting caught into something, it was the second leading cause for fire accidents in apartments. This graph here is also from that same annual report. This is a summary or graphic representation of fire injuries per category. So electrical fires were the first. I think the second is incendiary, and then smoking or cooking carelessness is the third, and then smoking is the fourth. So we see here, there are, of course, other causes that may explain for a fire, but the injuries do, since smoking is the fourth one, it is a pretty big one to consider in terms of the environmental impact in buildings that we do live in. And then switching over to like what landlords or property managers can hopefully save in terms of a smoke-free housing building, and switching to a smoke-free housing building are, overall, perks on incentives on insurance plans, and also just property value savings across the board. So a recent study found that costs on properties allow smoking everywhere were nearly double that of smoking related costs incurred at smoke-free properties. In addition to, compared to smoke-free units, cleaning and refurbishing costs can actually be up to $3,000 more in units with heavy smoking. And then maintenance and refurbishing costs are really not the only costs associated with loud smoking in your building, but nationally, fires caused by cigarette smoking have resulted in over $300 million in property loss each year. In addition to, New York State could save up to maybe $57 million annually in healthcare, renovations, and fewer fires if smoke-free housing were widely adopted. So I'll let those numbers speak for themselves, but obviously there's a lot of financial savings that could be incurred, but also just the wellness of people in the building, residents could also be achieved in light of a smoke-free housing policy being adopted. So with all that being said, with all the information at hand that I just offered, it's really, I think, just drawing it back to home and why I'm here. So through a smoke-free housing policy, we have two goals, namely, really to work with any sort of building landlords or property owners to adopt a voluntary policy. So that means, if a building is interested in going smoke-free, we would help them with that. It's not a mandatory policy by any means, but if this is something that they would want to instill, we could help with that process. So really, we're here then to ensure that all units and common areas are smoke-free in the building. In addition to, we would partner with residents who would like to live in that building to go smoke-free and assist in speaking with their landlords and property managers. So happy to, if there are residents here who are currently interested or, have some sort of slight interest, feel free to let me know, and, would partner with your appropriate landlord or, leadership person in the building to go forward with a dialogue on a smoke-free housing policy.
So Stephanie, let me understand. So
Yeah, please.
so if you are a building owner, you get some sort of there's some sort of financial benefit for transitioning your building to smoke-free?
So there are indirectly, yes, there are. Like, we wouldn't give a perk per se, but on insurance plans for buildings that have one, you could always inquire with your insurance company about what perks you could unlock with going through a smoke-free housing policy process, if that makes sense. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I know that
Yeah.
were you the group that was also giving out the patches when we were trying to do smoke-free NYC, or is that a different group?
Believe that's a different group. Yeah, we don't give patches or anything out like that per se, but if you're interested, we definitely have a partner that we work with that I
Okay,
could point you to.
very good. Sorry to interrupt. I just
Oh,
want
you're good. Yeah, and I'm happy to welcome any questions after, because I know that this can be a little bit confusing. But with the goals kind of setting, the policy process, really, our action in helping a building go smoke-free is really, we provide the technical assistance, any resources and materials that would help develop that policy and help the building adopt it. So, we provide templates for policies, the survey templates, which is the first step under the policy process that we would begin or embark on. And then if there's interest gauged from the surveying and it's apparent, we would then host an educational session, rather, like today, where I come in and speak about what a smoke-free housing policy is, what are the benefits, and things of that nature. And then really the technical process to follow would be then to develop and finalize a policy that is suitable for the building, to include common areas, no smoking in the units, and other sort of, if there are entrances or other things or amenities that want to be considered within that policy as well. And then finally, the vote, or depending on what kind of a building it is, co-op, condo, market rate, rental, supportive housing, I work with all of them, is either to vote or make a decision for that smoke-free policy to be adopted accordingly. So with that being said too, aside from doing smoke-free housing policy, I just wanted to put in a plug for the other kind of policy work that New York City Smoke-Free could help with CB11 with. So we, and this would be something that I would charge as well, like we also help businesses, any sort of community institutions or faith-based organizations also to help them develop a tobacco-free outdoor policy, which is what we call it. This policy is also voluntary, so something that a business or individual entity would decide to take up. And really the goal, I think, which is very in alignment with the smoke-free housing policy, is really to promote a smoke-free environment and a more aesthetically pleasing environment, especially if we're community members, engaging in that environment. And our policy assistance is the same as for a smoke-free housing policy. So, we would survey, educate, and then develop and adopt the policy, and then the leaders of whomever the entity is would then decide on what the decision is for the smoke or the tobacco-free housing policy as well. And then also just wanted to plug our other, it's another component to our program here at New York City Smoke-Free, which is our reality check program. And this is really for students who are ages 13 to 18, for them to become peer health advocates around tobacco, and especially the vaping epidemic that we see in our youth today. And, if you have any daughters, sons, children of your own or grandchildren, you can always feel free to, if they're looking for something a little bit extra to do and add to a resume for college, we would love to have them on board. And, you know, this program is really awesome because they do get to speak with legislators up front, develop the leadership skills and things of that nature, you know, to be engaging in their forthcoming work and whatever they want to do. So I just wanted to give a quick plug for our reality check program and that. So, you know, and really, as to conclude for this and why I'm here, I would really love to just leave off on some tangible partnership ideas that we could, you know, hopefully follow up with after tonight's meeting. If there is a way that, you know, we could contribute to the newsletter or the housing committee email or whatever communications you have, you know, if New York City Smoke Free could be highlighted or write a small piece for that, let me know. Would love to write something up so that we can get our message out there beyond tonight. Secondly, if there are any special events that we could collaborate with CB11 on in terms of, you know, speaking at a full community board or even hosting, there is a 15-minute documentary called Black Lives, Black Lungs, which we could host and have a community discussion around. Would love to, you know, talk about that further. And finally, if you're just looking simply for smoke-free housing, policy help, or any sort of helping with the tobacco-free outdoors policy, also would love to be in contact with you as well for that assistance if needed. And here's my email. So I am Rachel S. Altman at healthsolutions.org. And yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Mhm.
We're going to take some questions, but could you go back to, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Do you want me to go back to my
Go
slide?
back to that slide with
Of
the
course. Yeah.
statistics on it.
Yes, give me 1 second here. And just let me know. Give us this one, right? Was this the one you're looking at?
I think it
it?
was just talking about people and the
Mhm.
effect on the number of people you've helped.
Oh.
Trying to catch that.
Yes. Yeah, this is in the beginning here. I know there are a lot of numbers. Oh, sorry.
That's good. That's good stuff.
Yeah, a lot of numbers, a lot of data, but here we go.
Have you seen? Okay.
Mhm.
See.
Just gonna put my window
Great.
here.
So I guess I'll open it up to questions from the committee first. I have some
Mhm.
questions, but I want to, Ms. Pabon, your question, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and thank you, Stephanie, for your presentation. I know that smoking is a real health problem with the Black and Hispanic population here in East Harlem and actually everywhere. But I have some questions regarding I got like 4 questions that came up.
Sure.
The first one is, did you mention that some of the houses that you work with, they would have some units in their property that can be smoke-free, or does it have to be the whole building?
So we have really worked historically with buildings to make their entire building smoke-free
Okay.
in terms of the housing. Mhm.
Okay, because the reason why I asked, because you know, now that they have
smoke this.
marijuana is now
Yeah.
recreation, how does that help or hurt the things that you're trying to do to stop people from smoking? And I was just wondering if there's, when someone designs any buildings, have there been any inventions or tools that architects or in design can make it where people can, you know, smoke, but still it's not really going through the house? Because you mentioned people, when, you know, people cook, you know, you still smell it, but most of the time you can get an exhaust fan to push it out into the outside. Do you know of any techniques or in the architect world or design world or, you know, construction that could help minimize the smoke in buildings?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I just wanted to disclose I'm not an architect by training, so I'm not sure of like the latest technologies that are out there. But in all candidness, they're really for like, you know, purchasing any sort of device off the market per se, in terms of like HEPA filters, those things don't entirely eliminate the smoking or the secondhand smoke particles that do get emitted when someone smokes. It could, buffer and mitigate some of those and the content of how much you're breathing in, but it still is a thing. I think to your first question though, in terms of including marijuana, so we have worked with buildings to include smoking marijuana, like combustible marijuana, meaning you light up, a marijuana joint or something like that. We can include that, but when it comes to medical marijuana, it's still kind of a gray area, something that I would have to probably look further into if that.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up because
Yeah,
my next
sure.
question was regarding the carcinogens
Yep.
that you mentioned in the cigarettes, is because
Mhm.
cigarettes have been around for so long. So of course they know the effects of the chemicals that they use. Do you have any data on the type of chemicals, if any, used in recreational marijuana or medical marijuana? Is there any data out for that? And would that cause the same type of problems that cigarette smoke is having on people's health?
Mhm. Yeah, so generally the data is out there. I didn't bring specifics with me, but there have generally across the board, like the carcinogenic chemicals that are burned at when you light that cigarette or that joint is of the same nature as one that's in a cigarette that we traditionally know of. But I can definitely follow up with like Marlene and send that information to you, since I didn't come with specifics, if that's something that you want me to do.
Okay, my last question is
Sure.
regarding the program that you have for the children. How many of the East Harlem schools do you go to help or do outreach programs to help kids to stop smoking, vape, especially vaping? And how often do you go? And that's my last question. Now leave it to the floor and put it on mute while you answer. And thank you so very much again.
Thanks, Beverly. No worries at all. So the thing is, me and my colleague Ayo Ali, who is actually not here, he's on PTO, but currently he heads up the program. We actually haven't made a big presence in East Harlem, but we have connected with the youth committee and have been talking with them about connecting with the school. So we're just really just making a presence and a groundwork plan for connecting with the youth. But if you have any schools offhand, please let me know. We'd love to connect with you.
I think I saw Candy's hand up.
Sure.
Candy,
Candy.
did you have a question or
Hi. I already Beverly asked some of the questions that I was gonna ask, so thank you, Beverly. But also, you do tenants meetings with the residents as well before the building decides to go smoke free.
Absolutely. Yeah, anyone that we can speak to and be helpful for, we're definitely here for that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
I had a few questions too, but
Yeah.
I do want to see if any other committee members have questions. All right, I'm going to jump in with my questions and then we'll see if there's questions in our attendees. But again, thanks so much for joining us. I think we do get a good number of complaints at this meeting from residents who are tired of, I'll say, mostly weed smoke in their courtyards and in their public areas that affects their health and quality of life and their children. So I think this is very, very relevant right now. But Mike, I'm wondering, because I think we have one building that was built smoke-free from the beginning in our district on 97th. And Lexington between 90, maybe 97, 98, or between 96 and 97. And that was like a green building that got a lot of accolades and it started out as smoke-free. If there's new development in our neighborhood, is there any way to talk to them about the building being smoke-free from the beginning? So then how can we do more of that? Like, because then you attract people who don't
Right.
want, they need a break from having so much smoke in their living areas. Do you engage developers and so on?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The thing is, we don't have that like local health authority to go ahead and help enforce the smoke-free policy that was in place from the beginning. But if that's something that the building has had and it's on the books, we do have a contact at the Department of Health that we could pass on to you and their contact, and they're the ones that would help reinforce and find a way to work with the building to help with the enforcement plan. Yeah, so directly not us, but more than happy to make a referral to our colleagues at DOH if that's helpful.
I just wondered if, in terms of
Mhm.
best practices, like
Oh,
the
okay.
same way when they're putting up a new building, we used to ask them to put a parking lot so that all the new people they bring in will have a place to put their cars. We used to do
Mhm.
that. I'm just wondering, as part of land use, and given our community has, like, I don't know, one of the highest asthma per capita in the country, could
Mhm.
you guys go to land use or one of the other committees as well? Because land use is where they
Yeah.
decide, right,
Mhm.
about the new housing, and say, hey, while you're designing this new building, consider making it smoke-free.
It's a great
I
idea.
just wonder, I mean, because
Yeah.
we have buildings and people, it's very hard. Smoking cessation is very difficult, I think, for a lot of people, and
Mhm.
people are trying. But if you build the house, you build the apartment or the building from scratch with no smoking, then I think it's so much easier.
Yeah, yeah, no, it truly is because you get all that heavy lifting, if anything, out of the way, or not even that, if at all. Does CB11 have a land use committee, or
Yeah, we
love
have a
to
land
connect
use.
with them? Okay,
And I definitely think that it should maybe be some of our best practices. Candy, you have more info? Or you want to add something?
No, I just wanted to say that I just wanted to mention that Sendero Verde, the tenants cannot smoke there. They have to smoke outside.
Oh, it's
Mm-hmm.
smoke-free.
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
tenants are going outside to smoke, and they have to take a smoke break or something, so
Is it in
yeah,
their lease that they can't do that, or
I think so.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So, also what you can do is just check in the Housing Connect. It'll show you which buildings are smoke free because of the details. So when you're in the middle, doing the description and everything, all of that will show um it'll show the description of the building and what it has, the amenities. And a lot of them are starting to say that they're smoke free. So you just may want to take a look at that. Okay. That's all I just wanted to share.
Thank you so much, Candy. That's really important. Diane? Diane, are you
I'm
okay?
unmuting. I'm sorry. Technical difficulty, mostly by the person managing it. So Stephanie, I commend you and your organization on what you're trying to do, but I'm beginning to wonder how does all of this work, being that the state is promoting cannabis use. And people clearly do smoke cannabis recreationally. And I hear, Candy, what you're talking about, Sendero. Sendero, we did not ask for it to be smoke-free, so that must have come up subsequently after they had put the building up. But I'm wrestling with how is that going to work? So, if you want to smoke, whatever it is, tobacco, I understand is a problem, but if you want to go out and smoke cannabis, you now have to leave your apartment and go outside in the open space, correct?
that is correct. Yeah.
And I also would believe that there has to be a certain amount of footage from the area. Am I correct on that?
That is correct, and it depends on the policy and the determination, but yeah, you are. Mhm.
So I just can't see how with what they're trying to do with cannabis, what they're trying to do with smoke-free buildings, how is this going to work? I'm just making that as a statement, because there has to be, it kind of negates what they're trying to do with cannabis. If you don't-
Right, no,
If you do not have, you do not have the ability to use it, why would you buy it? And I'm throwing this out to the committee because they need to understand this as well.
Mhm.
As they start to roll cannabis out, whether it's edible. Edible is another issue, but clearly more people smoke it than they eat it. I'm just putting that out there, Stephanie. So what is your organization looking to do
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, I really appreciate your concern, and like you know, in all candidness, like the our fight and kind of tackle around marijuana use when it comes to smoking is a very new frontier for us. So we are discovering as we go along and stumbling and learning as we work with buildings, and it's very tricky because, you know, I recognize that it's recreational, and then there's the medical portion, which is another concern and legality and around like human rights and medical rights and things of that nature. So, you know, we, like I've said, like we have worked with a couple of buildings to help them include recreational marijuana use within their policies. But yeah, I mean, it's something that we're trying to figure out as we go along as well.
Ms. Pavone?
Yes, to piggyback off of what Diane said, you know, she's absolutely right. You know, I also have that same concern. That's why I asked the questions regarding with the things with marijuana. But Dawn, you made a good point that if organizations, you know, just like the EPA has to do an environmental a report for any buildings that's coming up, if you have to do, you know, have some type of program that's there at the start of any buildings that's coming up, that could be kind of useful, where you can have some type of plan where, like Diane said, people still going to smoke, you know, and if they paying rent in a certain place, you know, and that's a comfortable thing, and they have the right to smoke marijuana or cigarettes, you know, you don't want to take away that rights too. So I think it has to be something within the designs of the buildings, with the developers on trying to find that balance between the two. Because if I live on the 10th floor, I don't want to have to go all the way downstairs and then 10 or 20 feet away from my building just to smoke whatever, you know. So I think a lot of that needs to be spoken at the design part of with the developers at the start. But then you have the issue with the buildings that's already here, you know, and you don't want to take away people's right, because the city is and the state and everybody's going to be prospering off of the marijuana sales, just like they do with the cigarette smell. So this is, I don't know what kind of balance could be, but Diane is right that we have to think about that, especially if you're going to ask maybe later for some type of support for these programs and stuff like that. So that's a tightrope that you have to balance on. But I think for future, it needs to be spoken at the development portion at land use when housings are coming up, and that's what any community board, as far as I know, all community boards have a land use division, and it should be able to start there, and that's my point. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Pavone. And just, I think when I had asked you about the patches, I think I was thinking back to the Bloomberg administration when they gave out all these free patches. So people who wanted to stop were more empowered to stop smoking, right? Because some people want to stop, some people don't. So I feel like, and thanks, Ms. Pabon, for pointing that out. You can do something at the beginning. And then also if your building is like, you know, we want to go smoke free, you kind of need those patches and things ready, right? For the people who are like, well, you know, let me try, right? And the patch program was very successful because people didn't have to pay for the patches, right? So yeah, there's a lot here. So I saw a lot of hands go up, and I think we have Claudia, Diane, and Xavier, and I don't know if you so can we start with Claudia? Can you unmute yourself?
Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. In listening to the conversation, right, it sounds very similar. I wanted to ask, are you the same agency that NYCHA is using? Because I'm pretty sure I've worked with you guys before.
I'm not sure in what capacity, Claudia, but we have worked within NYCHA, like senior housing community centers to bring like educational programs. I don't know if you've run into us there.
Not too sure.
Not too sure. Okay. Yeah.
But Claudia, you're right, because the NYCHA program was also run through the mayor's office.
Mhm.
And we did some work with them for the census. But
And
you're also, right?
It's still happening. This
Okay.
smoke free, because what I wanted to say was, and you touched on, all of you have touched on it, right? They rolled out this smoke-free policy in NYCHA, and there was no way of connecting people to resources, because a lot of seniors who've been smoking for years, and it goes to what you were saying, turning a building that people have been used to smoking into a smoke-free building versus a building being built from the ground up, starting that way. You have to find resources for people who are addicted to cigarettes, because to me, cigarettes is an addiction. It's something that I fight on an annual basis. I've been 3 years without cigarettes, right? And it's still a struggle because I'll get stressed and want to turn back to it. But my point is, it's going to be difficult. Like everybody is stating here, for someone who is used to smoking, and then if you don't want to stop, that's something, a whole nother league within itself. So in order for them to do this policy, the smoke-free policy, they're relying on the telling system where, the person next door, whoever sees you doing it, they're going to tell you. But there's no real way of making a building smoke-free if you don't have willing participants. So you have to take into consideration, what are you doing to engage people to want to stop the smoking of whatever it is? You understand what I'm saying? So we have to take that into consideration, as well as what we're asking people to do, because these are habits that people have had for so very long, and you're asking them to break them. Or what are the repercussions if they don't stop? I yield the floor.
Thank you so much. Those are really excellent points. Ms. Perez, really excellent points. Do we want to incentivize people to stop smoking, or are we going to just tell on them? And you make a very good point, because our neighborhood has been very stressed out over the last 3 years for many reasons. And so I know that there was a yoga program. There was a few programs that were trying to like give people alternatives, but Diane, let me ask you, can I sneak Xavier in? And then
No, fine. No, I was going to defer to Xavier anyway, because I had already.
Okay. Xavier?
Thank you, everyone. And I appreciate the patience. I'm just taking care of my little ones at the moment, which is why I'm off camera. So you may hear them in the background if you haven't already. So it's an interesting point. Thank you, Diane, for bringing it up. I think this is something that, in collaboration with our Human Services Committee, that we should engage a dialogue when it comes to medical marijuana. And again, having not done a completely deep dive, but having friends who do consume medical grade, they tend to use edibles because it enters the bloodstream faster, and they can handle the dosage. It's easier to carve out. So I would think that there could be an argument to be made that it would not be necessarily discriminatory, because you would have the opportunity to consume through an edible component or in a pill format versus smoking, which, even regardless of whether it is tobacco or marijuana, smoking, the mere fact of the process creates a lot of carcinogens. So I think that to speak to both efforts, it would be worthwhile for both committees to have that discussion to determine, is this necessarily discriminatory, and engage an attorney in that process to really to better advise. But again, at the end, buildings can choose and developments to be smoke-free. that is within their rights and prerogative, I would say, on the face value. But again, I encourage this committee along with their human services to have that deeper conversation.
Thank you, Chair. Diane, do you want to close us out for
Yeah,
this portion?
I'm just going to close out because, and I speak from experience on this, having been surrounded by ARC when they were in operations, and they went to a smoke-free buildings, and that forced their people to come on the street in front of other people's buildings. And that's another issue. That's why I'm saying it needs to have a deeper conversation beyond just, presenting. And I commend you, and I understand why there's a need for it. I'm just saying that, whether you go through land use or whether you even go to city planning with urban planning, we need to take that into account, especially when you're talking about uses of public spaces also to be used for those who need to smoke, whether it's tobacco or cannabis. So I think it's a conversation that needs to be held at all levels of any kind of planning going forward. So not to put a damper on your parade, Stephanie, but you, and I know you're aware of this, there's a big push from the state about cannabis.
Mhm. No, and I just want to say I really, really appreciate, because I'm learning even how to approach this situation at hand from a more holistic perspective. So thank you for your points, Claudia, Xavier, all of your points, Beverly.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here, and hope that we can get like a little update from you, and maybe we can, if you circle back to Marlene, you can see if you're in our, I guess, our e-blast that goes out, maybe. I don't know how that works, but I don't know if I think our newsletter is kind of like an email, an e-blast. So hopefully we can plug you into that. And then I saw Mark Levine on there. If you want to plug into his events, I know it looks like he's a champion as well. So anyway, I want one more chance to let our attendees give any comments about or questions about this smoke-free housing issue. I'm opening it up to you just on the smoke-free housing. I know there's some other issues for our attendees, but if there's no further questions. Okay, so thank you so much again, Stephanie. Can you put your information in the chat one more time, or?
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
Excellent.
Thanks all. All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't see any old business. So I do know that there's a piece of new business coming up, but is there any old business that committee members want to rekindle, bring up, that we've worked on in the past? Okay. Oh, Diane.
I'm not sure if this is old business or whether it's new business. Do we have any update on the NYCHA RAD programs and the PAC programs? I don't know whether we could talk about that. It's a question that I have.
That's an excellent question. And like I told the Public Safety and Transportation Committee, I went to the last, they meet every Sunday from 3 to 5. The TA president's concerned about RAD and concerned about turning to Section 8 from Section 9. The last meeting that they had before the holidays, because there was 2 weeks after that, they did say that they are still, they are very concerned, because what NYCHA is trying to do now is have only some members or only some residents vote, and they're trying to let Section 8 residents vote, and that is unacceptable. Ms. Perez, you have more on that?
Yes, I do. The vote itself for the RAD PAC will be going through to all the developments that our elected officials have put into the portfolio. at this moment, they have up to 35 developments that are going under Rad Pack, and the vote is going through. That was what we were waiting to see. And that 20% consists of everybody within the NYCHA development. 20% of the vote would decide whether we stay Section 9, which is what we're under now, go into Rad Pact or into the trust. They still are trying to define the means of the trust. That's why they had all those open meetings for commentary. They're going to take that. Now they're going to revamp it for like the 18th or 20,000th time and bring it into legislation. So at this moment, I would tell you that they are going through with the Rad and Pact. We just have to make sure that when they come to make these agreements, that the residents are covered. And a lot of us are looking into resident management. But as far as on the legal status, like for instance, I'm gonna give Point an example. There are 1,518 apartments in Washington houses. So that means out of 1,518 people will only be allowed to vote. That would include the head of households only in this vote. And 20% of that 1,500 will decide what happens with the development versus if we decide to stay under Section 9 and use the component of resident management, we would need 50% plus one of the head of households to vote for it in order to proceed through with it. And the big fight was, if resident management was 50% plus one, why was the threshold for the vote for the Rad Pack or whatever it is they wanted to put us in? At first, it was only 10%. Now they have raised it to 20%. And that's where we're at with that.
So do you think the 20% is better than the, I mean, 20% is better than the 10, but is it fair? What do you think?
Not at all. It's not fair.
Okay.
Not at all. Because like 20% of the 1,500, you're talking about like 200 people are going to decide for 1,500 households. How is that fair? But that's what's happening.
Okay, I'm calling people out. So and I see you, Ms. Pavone, you're next, but I also I went to the November 13th meeting of, I forget the acronym, but this gentleman actually came to our committee to present. He gave a nice long presentation, but I'm going to go oh, okay. I'm going to go back to, wait a minute, Ms. Pabon, are you? I'm going to go back.
Yield.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go back to Ms. Perez, but I don't know if Claudia or Tamika, if you guys were at the meeting that would have been November 20th or, yeah, November 20th would have been the last one, because then there was vacation, I think. But if you guys did go to the last meetings and you know how things went with the rally on the November 17th, I guess chime in also, because my news is kind of late. My news of what was happening is later than people who went to those other meetings. But Ms. Perez, you had some more? Did you have more?
I didn't attend those meetings.
But you know already. I'm saying I don't know past that, but you already know whether you went to the meeting or not. You're the expert. So
no, but I gave basically most of the information of where we are at this point. You know, they're gonna roll out the vote. It's just a matter of when.
Can you guys push back against the 20% and go with the 50% vote? Is there still time?
We can try, but this is where we will need elected officials to stand up and back us, like really back us. And to be honest with you, they threw this all on us, even with the Rad Pack. The trust itself was thrown upon us during COVID, and residents still don't understand what's going on. They still don't know what, so the engagement piece, even though what they needed to do was, because it was people going to multiple meetings and they're using those rosters as to say that they engaged, and they were taking precedents and they were taking our attendance and using it as they engaged the entire development. So
Terrible.
their attendance doubled and tripled, because that's why me as a president, I tend not to go to the meetings,
Mhm.
because I don't want them to clarify it as they've engaged the entire development. So
Mhm.
that's where, they want to respect the title as a president in giving us and disseminating information inappropriately. That's the way they pass the buck back on to us. So I would say that we do have a voter's guide that's going out explaining to the people
Oh, great.
exactly what's going on and the choices that they are going to have to make. And basically, it's up to the residents. The residents have to stand up for that,
I wonder if we can't, I see Candy said electeds should put a hold on the trust until the tenants' voices are really heard. I agree. I wonder if we can write a letter reiterating that we would like to see 50% vote instead of the 18 or 20% vote. I'm wondering out loud.
Definitely can. I mean, it doesn't hurt to put it together. Like,
so I'm gonna
really
go to Diane and then to Tamika, because I know Tamika, you were at a few of those meetings, but let's try to wrap this up maybe in the next 5 minutes, because we have some people waiting patiently in the attendees who want to share some information under new business. But Diane, followed by Tamika.
Well, I'll be just straight to the point. I brought it up because people had asked me about it because they know that I sit on housing. And honestly, I'm not very clear on what it is specifically that both of these items are supposed to be doing. I know the guy gave a presentation, but as we all know, sometimes they're so long-winded, they're not really pointed to what needs to be done. But listening to Claudia, there's still work to be done. And I'm not sure, does Lincoln Houses know? I'm not even sure if they're included in the conversations. And we, as East Harlem, have the second largest amount of NYCHA housing. So we should be engaging them all to come in and say, what do you want, so that we can stand with you. That's why.
I agree. I do want to just drop a little bit of what my impression is, and I can be corrected by anybody who wants to, but I believe that there are some very influential TA presidents who are on board with this. And what Ms. Perez might be saying is that some people who are on board with this might make up that population of voters. So I think what I'm going to pledge to do on 7:43, I'm going to pledge to talk to Xavier and see if we can't draft something supporting that they fully represent the developments and not just pick the people who say okay, right? Once they get to their 20%, try to have those people, but really engage and tell people what's at stake. Really explain to them what happens when you switch from 9 to 8, right? So I'm gonna talk to Xavier about that. Miss Kate, is it Renee? Oh, okay, I wasn't sure if you were adding something. So if it's okay, I want to close out Candy, you have something else for old business?
Yeah, just on the same topic of this whole NYCHA stuff, I think that we will set a precedence if Community Board 11 does that. I don't know what other community boards are doing it, but at least it sets a precedence that, we're being heard, and that we're actually more concerned about the residents of East Harlem over whoever else is supporting NYCHA, because how many times have we been going to these meetings or not, and even when these presentations have been said, if you listen to the recording, it's been said many times about the voting. It's not sufficient.
Right.
I mean, 18%, like seriously, that's a big disservice for us. And then on top of that, we have, we're not that, because they're going to say, well, we got the 18%, but what happened to the 50?
Yeah.
That makes it half and half. Voices are really being heard, whether we agree to disagree. But I think everybody, because I myself, I don't agree with the 18%. I'm not comfortable with this whole trust, only because it's the same people on NYCHA being on board, being put on those boards, and only one or two people. When I keep saying over and over, even when they were trying to do the infills, we should have every development should have a representative in all boroughs, all right, where we have the NYCHA buildings to be on the trust. Then you make it even. Now we're talking something. But the fact that it's the same people, the CEO and the chair, and they're gonna be part of the trust, that the mayor appoints somebody, one or two people, that's not sufficient enough to say the residents. And I'm fully more for the resident management and resident engagement than having anyone else come in and tell the tenants, have a different management company and run it for them. When I think that there's enough people that live in NYCHA that are competent enough to have experience, whether they sit on this board or not, but that they have that experience with management, or even running maintaining a building or something like that. And everyone that has that talent should be afforded that opportunity to have that voice to say, give us an opportunity, even if it's one building at a time.
Right.
But each building should be tried to see how they can be self-sufficient and make it work, like the till, and I keep saying it over and over. But I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I think that we should send out a letter, and whether we be the first one or not, what can we lose? Nothing.
Absolutely.
And nothing to lose. At least
I'm
we're
with you.
representing our community, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we are on the record, so we are adding our thoughts to the record, so they do count. And Tamika, can you close us out on
Thank you.
your comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say a group of us will be going to Albany on January 23rd to talk to our elected officials about this whole program and trying to get some of the housing committee members on board to repel the trust, because they actually did this illegally, if with things stuff like that. So a group of us in the community is writing legislation to repel the trust. And then a group of us is going to go up to Albany with our demands if the trust has to be on the table of the whole logistics. So that's my 2 cents.
Nice, nice. Can you put your information in the chat so people can connect with you if they want to go up? That's not caucus weekend, right? Do we know what caucus weekend is? The when everybody goes up to lobby?
Yeah, that's in February. We're going
okay.
on January 23rd.
January. Okay, can you put some information, whatever you feel comfortable sharing? So if the people want to go up with you or send support or send you with some snacks or whatever, however they can support, can you put a point of contact in the chat and then maybe just say it out loud for the record?
I can, like always, you can reach me on my cell phone number, 347-539-4183. By email, T as in Tom, M as in Mary, A as in Apple, Peter, C as in cats, the number 68.com. And I'll put in the chat too. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you. So if we could, thank you so much. I want to come back to this, and I'm glad, Diane, that you brought it up, and we need to keep it in front of our minds. Can we move to new business at this time? Okay, so for new business, I just want to ask if Miss Jacqueline Allen is still on. You have an issue affecting you and your neighbors. Could you give us a little information about that at this time?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here, and thank you everybody for being here for the residents of East Harlem. I've been a resident here for 31 years, and I live in a Hope Community building, and we were affected by the bomb cyclone that came through on Friday, the 23rd of December. And we had some excessive leaking in our building. I'm on the 3rd floor. It started on the rooftop from the gutters. I believe it sounded like one of the gutters broke. And I know my other 2 neighbors that live above me in the same line of apartments also had major water damage. Now, this damage had been going on for quite some time with the roof. And the person that lives on the 5th floor in the line of apartments where I am has been majorly affected by this for a long time. And the 4th floor also was starting to get seriously damaged by water throughout the past couple of years as well. And then this bomb cyclone came through and it just, you know, of course, made everything worse, and then came into my apartment. And, you know, this building was originally an HPD building and then was sold to Hope Community, and they got renovated it.
Mhm.
And I was here through that whole process. And so about 10 or 15 years ago, this whole issue with the gutter and the roof and all that became predominant then. And I went through the channels of, I'm a retired civil servant, so I knew about the channels of like calling 311 in addition to letting the landlord know.
Mhm.
And I went through the buildings department. They came here and they did some pointing on the brick wall that we have on my side of the building that's facing the Detective Omar Edwards Park that's there, that's soon to be renovated as well. And
Are you, I'm so sorry, Miss Allen, are you on 103rd?
no, I'm on 124.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Sorry, I did receive some calls, but I just wanted to see. Oh, keep going. I'm sorry.
Yes. So, working with the buildings department and HPD when this first happened about 10 or 15 years ago, it got resolved and patched up. But then, like I said, my neighbors who live above me had these ongoing problems. And, you know, unfortunately, I'm sure many of us are familiar with tenants not wanting to make, you know, these calls, or maybe not even knowing how to make calls to 311.
They're afraid of retaliation sometimes.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And things going further. So, I mean, I myself am concerned as well about any sort of
Mhm.
retaliation. But like I said, I believe that, you know, I feel I know the right resources, and coming to the community board, you know, helps me to feel safe. And also, I've worked with the Parks Community Board. I believe that the
Oh, our Parks Committee?
Parks Committee, right.
Excellent.
And yeah, and I went on some tours with them and things. So, you know, I of course, I lived here for 31 years. I love my neighborhood.
Mhm.
And I love my neighbors, you know, so we all need a lot of help here.
Mhm.
And I had reached out to Hope Community when this damage was first occurring, and it was actually 4 in the morning when I called them. And I've had problems in the past, I'd say at least 2 years. It's starting to get really bad, where they're non-responsive. They don't want to send people out. The person they have answering the phone is very nasty.
Oh, so Miss Allen, I just I want you to be heard, and the
Yes.
next time you're at our meeting, you know, say something in the beginning too, because sometimes we can sneak you in the beginning. But I'm gonna forward you to Marlene, and she's going to try to help you. And I just want you to know that, like, that's our first step, right? And then I'm familiar, and a lot of us do know people at Hope Community, and sometimes if you don't get the right person, then you don't see the change you want to see. So Marlene is going to work with you. And then, you know, going forward, if this continues to be an issue, we took a tour at I think we took a tour of 3 buildings in sort of in over by 100, and I don't want to call out anybody's house, but we've taken tours before.
Right.
And asked the top people at those developments to take the tour with us. And then we have seen results quite quickly after that. So if you could just please reach out to Marlene at the office. Marlene, can you drop our number? I could look it up in my phone, but if you could drop our, okay. She says, just in case you can't see, please call the board office regarding constituent cases, 212-831-8929. And again,
831-8929.
oh, I'm sorry, I said that's fast. 212-831-8929. And if we find that there's a pattern or, the things are not moving in the right direction, then we will often write a letter, or we'll take a tour ourselves to see what the issues are and try to escalate it. But I think Marlene has worked very well with some of these owners, and they definitely want to make sure that they stay in the good graces of the community. You can
That's
also
good to know.
email her at MN, like Mary Nancy 11
Yes.
at cb.nyc.gov.
Okay.
Thank you for staying on and sharing that with us. And again, we will look to hear from you.
Thank you so much for hearing me today, and I appreciate everything that you all do.
Sure. And thanks for speaking up for the people who are, a little timid about this kind of thing. It's not easy to do. So we appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Diane, do you have something on new business before we?
Well, believe it or not, you're not, and most of you probably will not believe this. There are buildings that are sending up too much heat. I don't know if you've heard about it yet. Riverton being one of them. And I understand one of the NYCHA buildings also had a problem with that. Has anyone else heard about that recently, about too much heat in the buildings?
I have heard about that. In fact, there was a fire because someone had their air conditioning on 24/7.
Right.
So
I don't know if there's been complaints that come to the community board, but one's just as bad as the other, believe it or not. For people who really has asthmatic issues, too much heat can sometimes become a health hazard. So I just want to put it on our radar. That and also, have we had any status about the Lincoln water tower that burst over the holiday? That's a big issue. Claudia, have you had any chatter? You heard any chatter from your tenants about concern about water tower?
We don't necessarily have water problems, but we do have the overage in the heating, like overheating in apartments, so especially on the first floors.
This is oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Ms. Perez.
Yeah, there were also a couple of fires over the weekend here, but everything seems to be under control. But no, we don't have problems with the water.
Right, like they did in Lincoln where it burst and it just destroyed several apartments.
No, what happens is those pipes are old, and what they're doing, they're only replacing the part that burst, and due to the freeze, how we got cold so quickly, and then we cooled down so quickly, those pipes tend to expand and they burst. So that happened in multiple developments over the holiday season. I know, for instance, in all of Manhattan, because I am in contact with the district council of presidents, that happened to Lower East Side a lot. It happened over on the West Side, Wise Towers over there. Why Sir Brownstones had that also happen. And I know that it was, I think, like you said, in Lincoln, but there were multiple water outages.
That's something.
So again, yeah, I wanted to put it on our radar. People have a tendency not to complain, particularly if it's too much. They complain among themselves rather than complain as they choose to us or to even the agency. And I would imagine that many of these same issues are happening in complexes where they share a boiler. And I know that many of the complexes have one boiler with connections to, the centralized, wherever that may be. Sometimes it's across the street, sometimes it's right in the midst. And regulating that sometimes becomes an issue, particularly if the weather gets warmer.
Yeah.
And they can't manage it to bring it within range, to bring it so that it's not, unless they turn it completely off, and then you don't have any heat at all.
Yeah, and nobody wants that, but you have, when I was doing Sandy recovery for NYCHA, I had 33 developments in my portfolio, and in Coney Island, people had so much, there were people in the same apartment complex that had so much heat that they would get nosebleeds and headaches.
Right, right.
And if they could open their window and still it would be too hot. And then several floors down, there would be people freezing, putting
Right.
hot water into bottles and sleeping with hot water bottles, and it became a distribution issue. So one thing I'm going to suggest, and I don't know how we would do this, but we had some extra funds and we put direct feedback thermometers into people's apartments and did an audit so that people could see, okay, wait, these apartments are all 62 degrees. These apartments are 86 degrees, you know, like what's going on with the distribution channels, and kind of validating what the residents were saying. Too hot is very bad. Too hot, it can be very unhealthy for people, especially people with asthma. So and then if you use AC 24/7 and you start a fire, you know, that's also a problem. So I'm glad I'm writing this down as new business. And I want to.
It's an issue that Riverton will be discussing it among themselves sometime next week. And, you know, maybe I'll bring back what our property people said to us is the issue. And it may be common in that we're a complex too.
Right.
We're complex too. So I just wanted to put it on our radar.
I'm gonna make sure that goes into our minutes.
Yeah,
So
and the water issue, what's the status with Lincoln?
And what's a bomb cyclone? That's something that Jacqueline mentioned. I'll find out later, but there are some of these terms I wasn't sure about, but I put the water tower down and the heat distribution problem. Ms. Pabon, any last thoughts?
Yes.
Oh,
my
I see you
question-
too, Tamika, after Beverly. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, my question is in regard to the systems that they use in NYCHA, there's no way that individually the apartments units can turn off their heating or like radiator. Is that also something that can be looked at? Do they have a turn off knob? Because I know most of the time when you have a radiator system with steam, you can turn off your radiator within a room. If it's too hot. So I just want to
Right.
know, NYCHA, do they have that option also? Or if it is that the system is just so old that they don't even want a chance turning any knobs that's in there.
Yeah.
And it's something that needs to be looked at through maintenance.
You make an excellent point.
Can I take that? Can I take that?
Oh, I have one for Coney Island too.
Yeah.
But
let me
go
just-
ahead.
Let me just take that, because the Riverton also is similar in that respect, that they have radiators. No matter how you turn off the radiator, for whatever odd reason, it's still hot.
Yeah.
It's still hot.
It's still hot.
Okay.
And mobile boilers makes it more difficult because you have to manually change. Candy might have some more information, but you do have to, on some of those mobile boilers and those old boiler systems in Coney Island and Far Rockaway. I don't know as much about, well, I know some developments in East Harlem, but you cannot, someone has to come in and change that distribution system. You can't just turn it off. So I'm going to say, because we're past 8 o'clock, I'm going to say, Candy, if I put this on the agenda for next month, can you give us some more talks about it during that meeting?
About what, the controlling of the heat?
Yeah.
Well, some buildings, some of the people, like my mom, she lives in the Jefferson, and so hers, she really doesn't get enough of anything of the heat. It's very light. You could feel the heat, but it's just not enough.
Right.
And she has the radiator where you can touch the knob and control it, but it does nothing.
Right.
Whereas in my apartment, I could just turn it on or turn it off, because when it's too much, I turn it off.
Yeah.
And so that controls my heating.
But I don't think everybody has it like that. Like some of the people who have the old HVAC systems. Let's I want to put this on for next month and see if we can find, and thank you, Ms. Perez, NYCHA does And some campuses have monitors. Yeah, some campuses do. I know down Lower East Side did a big like study on the distribution of heat. So
Keep
a
in
bomb,
mind, keep in mind, Don, that many of these old buildings are riser pipes. You know, they just run pipes straight through the building.
Yeah.
Where there's no control.
The second
of that
floor and
radiant.
first floor is really hot, and then the people
Right.
on 7th are freezing.
Right, it's just riser. So, okay, I'll report back what we learned from the Riverton.
I hope, thank you so much. And I see, thank you, Miss Allen. A bomb cyclone is a warm and cold air pressure collide quickly in a weather system where air temperatures drop quickly. Thank you. I just learned something new. Can I hear from Tamika and then from Miss Pavone, and then we are going to hopefully close it out?
On what topic, Dawn?
Oh, I
Yeah,
saw
but
your hand for.
I had my hand raised.
Oh, I no, that was from earlier. But since I got it real quick, what are we going to be doing about the tax abatement issue? We know that it's been expired already, and there are talks in Albany about a new bill. So you know, just trying to bring that back up.
So that's an excellent question. I see Tamika, I see you on here twice with the hand raised, but Ms. Pavone, do you have anything to close out before I ask Xavier to give us any update he has on the
Yes, in regards to the radiators, and we're getting back to that at a later date. Is there any way we can invite an expert from Nitro and maintenance on the type of systems that they have, and just give us a little more education on it, because from what I'm hearing, every development seems to have a little bit of different type of system. And maybe, you know, just to give for education to the board on the Nitro heating systems.
Maybe we could get the borough director or like the deputy to come for well, at least for Manhattan, right? Someone from the borough director's office. I'm writing that down. So what I want to do is I want to move on to our closeout, but there are 2 Tamika maps here. So that means, Tamika, you forwarded your link to someone, and that person is also trying to be heard. So if you could put in the chat who you are, because
that's Beverly McFarland.
Oh, Beverly. Okay. So do you want to give us some more thoughts? Because that's why I call him Tamika, because it just said Tamika. You want
yeah, because I didn't have the link.
Oh, okay. Well, it's good to have you here. You want to close us out with some comments and thoughts?
Yes. Well, actually, I wanted to piggyback back off of Claudia and then state that in TAF, we are also experiencing several outages as far as hot water and heat. Also in the bursting of pipes. This weekend, I had 2 experiences on New Year's Eve. My house was flooded with 3 inches of water.
Oh
no! We had to sweep it out of my home. If the pipe burst underneath my sink and flooded the lady under me, all the way almost down to the first floor. So this water bust. And Nitro staff, if it wasn't for me being the president, this would have been no staff. There was no staff on premises. It was hard to get. When I even called the dispatch, which is a number that the presidents only have. Right. And they told me to get a ticket while the water is profusely coming out my pipe.
Oh no.
So that was a major problem. But what more importantly is that I don't know if you guys can help, is that we have new boiler system in place, a multi-million-dollar boiler system just sitting here that have not been commissioned because the contractors are waiting FDNY to come and inspect the boilers so they can commission the boilers so we can have proper and adequate heat and hot water. But because of that, we are on a temporary boiler system, and these contractors are being unresponsive. So I don't know if you guys can help with the FDMY portion of it that we can, if someone can call and find out why, you know, or when are they going to come and do the inspection in Taft, so we can commission this new boiler system. So it doesn't make any sense if this system is it's just sitting there and it cannot be online in order for us to get adequate heat and hot water. Because the whole entire weekend, 4 of my 9 buildings was without hot water, and then the other buildings was without heat.
Oh, no.
So we got a $2.3 billion boiler system sitting there without being commissioned
Not
because
connected.
Correct.
And, okay, so, and that is really important because if they don't do that correctly, you could end up, I think, with what happened with Washington houses, I think many years ago, where there was an issue with, there was a, well, I don't want to go back to that, but I do know that it's very important that they get it right. But if you're waiting and the equipment is there, we really should see what we can do. So, Marlene, if you're there, should Ms. McFarland call into the office so we can start there in terms of our response to NYCHA?
Can I just email Marlene my email address, and then she can move forward on what steps I can make, put it in the chat?
Yeah, what you can do is send a general email to our general inbox that I put in the chat. I'll just copy and paste it so it's the last thing you see, or call the board office.
The thing is, okay, I'm on my cell phone and I'm not in town. That's why I said.
So Ms. McFarland, you want me to text you the information?
Yes, you can text me.
I'm gonna text you. Okay.
But I send
your email. Okay.
Yeah, but it's I made a mistake. I didn't put the A. But
no, I see it. But I'll text you the information, or no, I'll email it to you.
Okay, thank you.
And I see something about contact Ms. Gadsden, Regional Representative Candy. Is that?
But I spoke to Ms. Gadsden. I spoke to Marvin Watson. I spoke to Brian Holan. I have all of them on speed dial, and that's the only reason. That's the only way my house was able to get expedited turning off the water, getting the wet vacs, because I have those numbers. But my residents don't have those numbers.
Okay.
So that's not, in terms of contact, I have everyone on speed dial.
Okay.
And that's why it was expedited. It's as fast as it has in my apartment anyway.
Okay. So I just want to be respectful of everybody's time. Ms. Perez, is this something linked to this issue, or was that an old hand? Okay.
Issue.
Okay, give us just a few minutes.
No, it'll be real quick. Beverly, you have to reach out to your electeds, because when it happened with Washington, it was the council member that got them here ASAP to do the boilers. What you have to be aware of, because Washington has had new boilers that have not been working properly since the installation. What happens is like what was said earlier, they put an all new state-of-the-art system, and they have it going through to individual boilers, that the distribution tanks in the buildings that are still there from the creation of the buildings. So therein lies another problem that happened. Then what they're also going to have to do is redo everybody's risers. So
no, they did that. Let me interrupt you
with the radiator valves.
Okay, let me interrupt you. All my debt risers been changed. All the building that has been disassembled, all the old boilers and the old steam pipes has them. So everything in my system.
Put the monitors in the household to regulate the heat?
No.
It's okay.
I refuse the monitor.
So that's another thing.
Okay, so let me pause, because this is the kind of dialogue we definitely need. But I just want to come back to this, especially at our next meeting, but I probably am gonna email you, Ms. McFarland, and just get a little more information, because, you know, I feel like you should be able to walk out your apartment and walk across the street and get an elected but you know, I don't want to go down that road. So let me just pause.
No, but actually, Diana Ayala, Peggy, Peggy, no, Lord have mercy, Peggy.
Diana Ayala?
Yeah, but Maggie Moderna has
Oh,
been
okay.
really, she's been really helping and working closely with
Well,
me.
she
So I
should
cannot
definitely
say,
know. She should
yeah,
definitely
she's been
know.
working closely with me.
Oh,
But like
good.
I said, I don't have an issue when in terms of communicating and NYCHA doing what they have to do for TAF. I cannot say that there's a issue. I don't have that issue, but I'm just saying the systems.
Fire department.
That's right. They need to just go ahead and commission the boilers so we can. My argument would not be about heat and hot water. Then it will be about the system if they come on and commission the boilers.
Okay, thank you. And I commend you for being so vocal and so brave and bold with everybody. We really need that. So thank you for that. So there was a question on the table about our about tax abatement. I don't know, Xavier, if you want to put a few words in quickly about our process, where we are with tax abatement. I guess providing a safety net for our residents who have aged in place and who need new regulatory agreements in order to not have their maintenance costs go up. Xavier, do you have any?
Yeah,
okay, go ahead.
well, thank you, Don. Real quick, to the earlier point about the RAD and conversions, I would recommend that this committee draft a resolution to present to the full body. So that is one comment I just wanted to make, because I think it'd be important to review that and address the percentages and numbers to qualify for a vote, and so that way everyone on the board is aware, and we can stake out a position that can be sent to our elected. So that's the first thing. As for what was earlier presented in September, John and I had some conversation over that and about carving out the two. One was the development piece when it came to 421A, and how that should really go over to land use as a component. That this committee making a recommendation for those that have aged in place or on disposable income, with the sunsetting of the tax abatements, and making a recommendation for a new program that they could enroll in if they're being met with financial hardship. So I think we were midstream in having that conversation. I think, and so the update is that John and I were speaking. I know you and I spoke, Don, briefly about it, and just having a conversation so the committee can dive in to create a more robust presentation. Ultimately, where it should come down to is that looking at and keep it very simple with the bullet points on the tax abatements they had, how they have gradually reduced, and what their responsibility would be now, and how that is a financial burden, and advocating for a program to come from the state that they can enroll in as either a building or as individuals. So that, again, many of the people who invested into these co-ops in most cases, or other residences, they were given a period of time to save funds and prepare for that new tax liability. However, parts of those components were not allowing for those who were traditionally retiring in their future or most immediately, and the restricted income that a pension typically pays out, or when you're just on basic Social Security. So I think that we can pick that conversation up, and then in February, the committee can dive into a resolution on that. But I think keeping it very simple, calling out what 421A was intended to do, how it had served certain buildings in this community, and now the impact, and then calling for either the city or state in this particular instance to create a program for those that are financially burdened to be able to enroll in. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone.
Thank you, Xavier. It is definitely it's a very complicated issue, but we did not forget. We did not forget about that. And I made a note that we can bring this up and have maybe talk more about it in next month's meeting. So this has been a really productive meeting. Even though I saw a lot of people were quiet, I learned a lot, and I appreciate people coming on the line and sharing information and best practices. So that we feel like we're all in this together. I would suggest people to reach out to elected officials. Tamika's going up on January 23rd, I think. There's also going to be a caucus weekend. There's going to be opportunities. So we should definitely stay vocal. And Jason Wu, I saw your note that about doing a draft resolution. Maybe you have some good language on a draft resolution we can put together supporting NYCHA. But for now, if it's okay, we should take the roll. So we can go think about all this good information and think about ways we can support each other.
Chowdhury. Diane Collier,
Here.
Roger Flores. Brandon Gillespie,
Here.
John Green is excused. Alonzo Johnson,
Here.
Beverly Pabon,
Present.
Claudia Perez,
Here.
Dawn Sanders,
Here,
Anne Marie Vasquez,
Present.
Candy Vivas Vasquez,
Present.
and Jason Wu.
Present.
Thank you.
thanks everyone. So we will hopefully see you again before too long. Tamika, I see your note. I'll send you an email about how much research we should do for before we make a resolution. Thank you for that. But for now, let's all say good night. Happy New Year. Glad to see you all back this year and wishing you all the best.
Happy New Year.
Happy
Happy New Year and good night.
Happy New Year. Good night.